Now, after a week of mostly verbal condemnation, the international community has now begun to take action against Libya's leader, Muammar Gaddafi. Even as Gaddafi was bowing to continue his defiance on Friday night, the US began to implement a package of sanctions against him. The EU is expected to follow suit. Its foreign policy chief has said Gaddafi must be sent back into the cold. Now, Tripoli appears to be the last major city that is a stronghold for Gaddafi. On Friday, the Libyan leader appeared in the capital, promising to crush any enemy and vowing not to stand down. The residents in the city say parts of Tripoli are already beyond his control. As many as 7 people were killed in protests on Friday. Meanwhile, evacuations of foreigners are continuing from the capital's ferry port, and reports of thousands of foreigners queuing also at the airport. And this is where Gaddafi is holed up. It seems the final stronghold of the ruler is at Bab al-Aziza, where he tends to maintain his presence. That is said to be heavily fortified against the protesters. Dan Nolan reports.
The battle for Libya is most intense in the capital. This video, uploaded on YouTube, is said to be filmed in the Fashloum district of Tripoli on Friday night. AlJazeera cannot verify the online descriptions that say these are soldiers kidnapping the bodies of 2 anti-government protesters. But it seems clear the people of Tripoli have endured yet another sleepless night. With much of eastern Libya in the hands of the opposition, the calls to take control of Tripoli from Muammar Gaddafi are growing louder. This from his former interior minister.
Now there's only Tripoli and a few other towns left. That's why I urge the Libyan people that there's no going back. Going back's impossible. We have to move forward. All the patriotic, courageous and respected Libyan youth should help the people of Tripoli to carry out their duties.
Another online video, which cannot be independently verified, appears to show more soldiers joining the fight on the side of the protesters. This is said to be filmed in Zawiya, 50 kilometres to the west of the capital, as the tide of opposition spreads through the military. This from Libya's head of special forces.
I place all my expertise and capabilities at the service of the youth revolution. I urge all honest members of the special forces, officers and soldiers, the heroes whom I've worked with for a long time, to rejoin their units immediately and to protect the gains of the February 17th revolution and protect the lives of the Libyan people and their property.
There's no exact figures, but it's believed as many as 7 protesters were shot dead during Friday's battles in Tripoli. Colonel Gaddafi appeared on state television in front of supporters in Green Square, insisting the population was still behind him.
The Libyan people, if I'm not loved by my people, I don't deserve to live. If my people, the Arab and African peoples, and all peoples do not love Muammar al-Gaddafi does not deserve to live only for one day.
But he simply ignores scenes like this in Benghazi, as the Libyan masses turn out to say the 41-year reign of Muammar Gaddafi needs to end now. Dan Nolan, Al Jazeera.
Now, the leaders of Britain and Germany have agreed on the need for severe international sanctions to be imposed on the Libyan regime. And now Gaddafi's strongest European ally has also weighed in on the situation. At a political meeting in Rome, Italy's Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi said, quote, "It appears that effectively Gaddafi no longer controls the situation in Libya." Well, our correspondent in Al-Baida in the east of the country joins me now on the phone. We're keeping her identity secret for the moment. Thanks for being with us. Now, Al-Baida was one of the first to declare it was in the hands of the protesters. Is it still that way? What are the conditions where you are?
Yeah, it is still, by and large, in the hand of the protesters. Here and there, you do hear news about infiltrators being caught by the local security committees. Now, they say these are people who are getting orders from Tripoli, people who are trying to create some sort of chaos in the city. but I would say that by and large, it is in the hand of the opposition.
Are we seeing anything in terms of violence on the streets, any evidence of these infiltrators actually causing any trouble?
No, we did hear last night some gunfire and a bit of commotion, I would say, on the street. From what we understand, there was one man who had been caught, and then he revealed the presence of several other men in the street. Now, they have been all caught, according to the local authorities, and they're being detained somewhere around here. One of the people who are trying to create a provisional government told me that at the moment this is really their biggest challenge, to make sure that no one sort of creates chaos here, because they're fearful also of the fact that then accusations could come against the opposition, that the opposition is trying to kill some people or is actually also involved in acts of violence. Now, by and large, people will tell you that here in the east, it's a liberated area of the country, but it's also the oil-rich area of the country. So when they hear the speeches of Muammar Gaddafi, they do take them seriously, for the simple reason that if he wants to come back, and then this is a place that he would like to regain control of, specifically because of its oil richness.
Now, you've spoken of significant coordination amongst the security and the various elements of the city's, I guess, civil architecture, if you can put it that way. But who's running the city now? Is there a command structure in place? Is there a leader?
Well, it seems that a lot of the tribal leaders here are rallying around the justice minister who resigned about a week ago. They have met more than once. They're trying to form a sort of provisional government. I think at the moment it's really a joint effort. They do have priorities, security being one of them, and also returning some sort of normality to the city. It's been now completely shut down for more than a week. Shops are shut down, bakeries are shut down. They do need to come back to normality also because people are running out of food.
All right, our correspondent there in the east of Libya speaking to us live. Now, the UN's Security Council is meeting again on Saturday to firm up the draft resolution released on Friday that calls for action following the violence in Libya. During that meeting late on Friday, Libya's ambassador to the United Nations changed his position. He turned around and denounced Gaddafi. Just 3 days ago, Mohammed Shalgam had called Gaddafi his friend. He criticized the attacks on the civilians in an emotional speech, saying he couldn't believe the violence that the leader is now inflicting on his own people. And the UN's chief, Ban Ki-moon, has also urged the UN to act right away. He gave a list of what he's heard is happening in Libya.
Estimates indicate that more than 1,000 people have been killed. The eastern part of the country is reported to be under the control of opposition elements who have taken over arms and ammunition from weapon depot. There are daily clashes in at least 3 cities near Tripoli. The streets of the capital are largely deserted. People cannot leave their houses for fear of being shot by government forces or militias. Colonel Gaddafi's supporters are reportedly conducting house-by-house searches and arrests. According to some reports, they have even gone into hospitals to kill wounded opponents.
Well, our correspondent Scott Heidler has more detail on the events at the UN headquarters in New York.
After a briefing by Secretary General Ban Ki-moon of just how dire the situation is in Libya, the Security Council also heard an emotional plea from the Libyan ambassador to the United Nations. That is when there was a draft resolution floated to be reviewed by the members. It was drafted by the United Kingdom and France, and in that resolution it calls for a referral to the International Criminal Court for possible crimes against humanity. There's an arms embargo and a travel ban for Gaddafi's inner circle. Now, this resolution, a draft resolution, is going to be looked at again by a special session Saturday by the Security Council, and all indications are right now that it's expected to pass. Now, it has broad appeal, and that's not just from Western nations. There has been a unified voice of the international community that something needs to be done in Libya, and it appears as though Saturday is possibly when the Security Council will actually do something.
Now, in Yemen, there is mounting pressure on the president to resign as some of the country's major tribes announce their support for the anti-government movement. These include the Hashid tribe, considered the country's most powerful. Its members hold several key government positions. Protests in the capital, Sana'a, are continuing on Saturday. It's also emerged that 5 people were killed during Friday's anti-government demonstrations in the southern city of Aden. In Egypt, the ruling military council has apologized after military police beat protesters during overnight demonstrations in Cairo. The military council says the violence was the, quote, result of unintentional confrontations between the military police and the youth of the revolution. The council has stressed it did not and would not issue orders to attack protesters, and it's ordered the immediate release of the people arrested on Friday night. Thousands of Egyptians turned up in Tahrir Square on Friday, demanding that the reforms be enacted faster and for ministers linked to Mubarak's regime to go. Iraq's largest oil refinery has come under attack from a team of gunmen. At least 2 workers were killed in the attack. The plant is part of the Beji complex, around 250 kilometers north of Baghdad. A team of gunmen are said to have infiltrated the refinery in the middle of the night, laying bombs in strategic spots and then fleeing before detonating the devices. The attack has caused extensive damage, leaving the plant out of action for several weeks. The impact is expected to be felt mostly in the domestic market. This refinery supplies almost half of Iraq's petroleum products like gasoline and heating oil. Jane Araf has more from Baghdad.
This was a serious breach of security at one of Iraq's biggest oil installations. This time, it wasn't one of the pipelines or the oil fields, which is home to foreign investment. It's the biggest refinery in the country, the Beji refinery north of Baghdad. According to officials there, gunmen infiltrated the facility at 4:30 this morning, spraying the place with gunfire after they left as they laid bombs in control rooms. Those bombs set off fires that have caused extensive damage to a large part of the refinery. One engineer was killed by smoke inhalation, another technician killed by gunfire as the gunmen went out shooting. He says they're assessing not only the damage to the refinery, but exactly how this security breach could have happened. The facility is protected by a unit attached to the Ministry of the Interior. He says they are trying to increase confidence among staff who are afraid to come back to work, but in the short term it will lead to a shortage of gasoline, a shortage of kerosene, and certainly have an impact on the confidence of Iraqis that their government can keep these installations safe.
Now, much more on the unrest in Libya still to come on the program, including scenes from the airport in Tripoli where